Hey guys, I'm Sarah Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As you probably know, this channel is very much dedicated to all things pregnancy, labor, birth, and the postpartum period. I know I focus a lot on birth, that is my specialty, but I also thought that it would be important to give you some more information about the postpartum period. And so today I'm gonna share with you my top 5 things that I think is important for you to know about the postpartum period so that you feel so much more prepared and confident and ready to go. But before I get started, make sure you give it a like, share it with a friend, and then subscribe to my channel down below, and then let's get going. I always feel the need to explain what the word postpartum means before I get into any kind of information about postpartum, because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation about the word. And so the word postpartum is literally just the time from after you've had the baby, baby's out, you are now in the postpartum period. That means recovery. That means there's lots of different body changes happening as your body figures out what it means to not be pregnant anymore. And so there's all sorts of shifts, hormone stuff going on. If you choose to breastfeed, you're breastfeeding. And so that typically is considered the first 6 weeks after birth. That's the postpartum period, although the new research and new talks are happening, and they would consider now up until the first year after birth, you are technically in the postpartum period, okay? That is different than postpartum depression, okay? So now that we've cleared that up, let's talk all about postpartum. And so I wanna give you a heads up. I'm not even gonna say a warning because it's not even a warning. It's nothing wrong. It's just what to expect for that period right after you give birth. A lot of times in the initial 24 hours, 48 hours, weeks potentially as you get used to your newborn and as your body goes through all those changes. Again, trying to figure out how to not be pregnant anymore. And so the first thing I want you to know is what's called a fundal massage. So the fundus of the uterus, you are pregnant, your uterus is like up into your boobs. The top of the uterus is called the fundus. What happens when you have a baby, there's no longer a baby and they're like making it all nice and huge. And so what happens is you deliver and the uterus is like zoom, and it goes so much lower into your pelvis. Typically, right after birth, we can find the top of the uterus, we meaning your nurse, finds the top of the uterus right at the belly button. So you literally go from like, I can't breathe because this baby's inside, to down to your belly button. And then over time, that fundus, meaning the top part of the uterus, or it's really the size of the uterus, is gonna shrink down over time. So when you're in the hospital or even at home, one of the things that all of your providers care about is your bleeding. You will bleed like a heavy period, and then that'll taper off. That goes for a vaginal delivery. That also goes for a cesarean birth. And so one of the ways that we know what's going on inside and we check to make sure that you're not bleeding too much is, one, we just have to look, common sense, right? Like I'm gonna look at your vagina / look around your vagina area, your vulva, and then see how much bleeding is coming out. So we wanna see your pad, okay? If you ever feel like gushes or like clots coming out or something, you definitely wanna alert your nurse. But with that bleeding, one of the things we'll also check is to see that your uterus is nice and firm. Why do we care? Because prior to baby, there was this placenta connected to the side of the uterus. That was all this blood flow, like 700 milliliters per minute of blood flow that passes to your baby. That's your baby's life. We love it. Baby comes out, body's like, I did my job. Great, I don't need you anymore. You deliver the placenta, and then all those openings are just open to the world to bleed. What we love is for your uterus to have one big contraction that closes off all of those arteries and veins and then stops you from bleeding too much. The highest complication that can happen after birth is just too much bleeding. So it's postpartum bleeding. So there's a balance between too much bleeding and then normal bleeding. So your nurse is checking that. What we do though is we have to rub your fundus. Now, different research, different governing bodies have different recommendations for this. In general, what we want to check for is a rub on the top to make sure it's firm, meaning it's closing off all those arteries and veins. Sometimes that can feel really uncomfortable. If you had an epidural in labor, you may not feel it for the first little bit, but once your epidural's worn off, those nurses rubbing on the top of your uterus can feel really uncomfortable. Sometimes I will say, typically labor and delivery nurses are a lot more aggressive with their fundal massages. in making sure that the uterus is firm. If it's not, the first line of treatment in preventing too much bleeding is what's called the fundal massage. We give it a little massage and your uterus is like, whoa, running away from your massage, closing off all those arteries and veins is a quick fix if there's some bleeding. Now, does it always work? Not necessarily, but that is the first line of treatment. Expect them to rub the top of your uterus. It may be uncomfortable. They're gonna do that for the first 15 minutes or every 15 minutes for the first hour after you deliver or have your baby. And then it'll space out after that every hour, every 4 hours, every 12 hours until we know and we feel comfortable that your bleeding is under control. Number 2 is night sweats. So this is something that I know I will get texts from clients where they're like, I am dripping. And especially right now, we are in the middle of a pandemic for COVID, and fever is one of the signs of COVID. And so the number of people that are like, oh my God, do I have a fever? If you are sweating a lot, take your temperature, okay? Make sure you don't have a fever, but it is extremely normal for you to have some night sweats. Also, that goes along with that is peeing a whole lot. So once your body gets to deliver the baby or you birth your baby, prior to that, your body's like, I wanna hold on to all the fluids, all the prep to give enough volume in my body to keep my blood pressure high, knowing that I'm going to bleed a little bit. You're gonna lose some volume. And so after birth, body's like, I don't need any of this. I already did my thing. I did it all good. So it's like, whew, and it just, what we call diurese through sweating and then peeing. You can pee up to 3 liters of pee a day without having drank 3 liters of fluids, okay? So expect to still be peeing and be like, where is this pee coming from? Your body was holding on to it prior to birth. After that, you pee it out or you sweat it out. Night sweats are totally normal so long as you don't have a fever, nothing to be concerned about, but can be kind of a nuisance. That's also why I say make sure you bring a second set of pajamas to wear, because you may literally sweat through your nightgown or your pajamas when you're in the hospital. The third thing is that how you choose to feed your baby is entirely your decision. And with that, especially if you choose to breastfeed, and I will say that most people from my experience do intend to breastfeed, one of the things that you're not told is that breastfeeding to me is like a second labor, okay? That if you intend to breastfeed, one of my phrases is, it's the hardest thing you ever did until literally in one moment, it's the easiest thing of your life. So with breastfeeding, any new skill, any new process in your body has to figure it out. And then you have this newborn baby that's never breastfed before. So you kind of have to figure out your system together to make it work. The other thing is that the body takes about a month, we say, to regulate your milk supply, where your body's like, how much milk should I make? Initially, it's like, I don't have that much because your baby doesn't need that much. And then baby removes it. And then it's like, whoa, I better make sure I have enough. And then it's like, bam, your boobs fill and your milk volume changes. And then you have copious amounts of milk where your breasts fill a lot. And then once they fill and your milk volume changes or your milk comes in, which is not my favorite terminology, but you get the idea, or people will say that. Then over the next few weeks, your body's like, okay, I wanna make sure I have enough, but I don't need an oversupply. So there's this learning period for you. And then also this sweet little baby that's trying to figure out what it means and how it feels to remove the milk. So no, I am telling you right now that breastfeeding can be a challenge, but if you can push through with the right support, especially that you have your questions asked and you sort of are flexible and go with the flow, that really should be a bullet point here, but we'll just throw it in as a bonus. That if you're flexible and go with the flow, that you figure out what it means for you, knowing that whether you choose to breastfeed or not, it's entirely your decision, and there's nothing worth your mental health. I'm throwing in like 5,000 different extra tips on top of that. Breastfeeding is hard. Prep for it. Take your breastfeeding classes. Have your support in line. And then if you choose to formula feed, then also you're going to figure out your routine with your formula as well. Fed is best. Make sure your baby's taken care of. And then also your mental health matters. Number 4 is that there is a difference when you have a baby, this has to do with baby care stuff, between a rhythm and a schedule. So a schedule, a lot of us love our schedules. I want to have a schedule. I don't have the best schedule right now, but in general, I'm working towards a schedule and I crave a schedule, like to wake up at a certain time. I have lunch at a certain time. I go to the gym, I shower, my work starts at this time. I know I'm done at this time. That's going to be a schedule where it's on the clock. Babies, newborn brains thrive off of a rhythm, not a schedule. A schedule is kind of what works for us, but in terms of newborn development, of how their brains really do well, is if they have a rhythm, that there's sort of like a routine. And for a newborn, that's super easy. Honestly, to me, you can beg to differ. Let me know down below if you think this is true. What's most overwhelming about a newborn is the fact that they are new, that everything is new to you. You're like, I don't know you, but I sort of do because I do know you from being inside of me. But now there's this huge learning curve and everyone's afraid of hurting their baby or doing something wrong. But really, if you think about it, these poor little babies, they lay there and they look at you. They eat, they sleep, they poop, they snuggle. And that's literally what they do all day long. And they sleep up to 18 hours a day, okay? So with that, there's this rhythm of like, I wake up, I'm probably hungry when I wake up, I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna burp, I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna burp, and then I may be sleepy again, or at that point I'm gonna poop, you're gonna change my diaper, we're gonna hang out a little bit, and then I'm gonna fall back asleep. It's this rhythm and this cycle of a day. And as they get older, you add in some things based on their development. So there's a bedtime routine, for instance. Again, this could be an entire video, so please let me know if you want it. But that at nighttime, that like the lights come down and the sound changes, and eventually they can learn a circadian rhythm. Their brains aren't totally ready for that right away, but the light of the sun and then the darkness of the night sort of affects their calm and their ability to go to sleep. Then you add bath time in, and we do bath time, we do feed, we do story, we go to bed. Rather than at 6:15 we do bath time, that lasts till 6:30. At 6:35 we're changed and we're in feeding for the next 20 minutes, and by 7 we're reading our book, and by 7:10 is bedtime. Right? And that in theory, like of course you can sort of pay attention, but babies don't function off of numbers, they function off of that rhythm, and when they're pattern seeking brains. So the more patterns you create, the more they start to figure out this, okay, this is what life looks like now. Okay, this is consistent, I'm gonna learn this, and this is my reality. And that's what you're gonna teach them by a rhythm versus a schedule. And last but not least is get help from the start, okay? This doesn't always need to be professional help, but especially if you're in the United States, there is a culture around being independent. We pride ourselves on being busy. We pride ourselves on like, I got this. Even myself, I'm so guilty of this, okay? But when you have a baby, you're in the postpartum period, you're learning them, there's so many changes, there's new stressors, you're figuring out breastfeeding if you choose to breastfeed, or even feeding schedules, and like, what about going back to work? There's so many things. One of the things I hear a lot from families is, especially when they're getting help from their family, let's say I'm the birthing person and my mom's gonna come help me, a lot of people are contemplating whether or not to have them come right at the beginning, or do they wait for 2-3 weeks when their partner goes back to work or something to have that help. And my recommendation is that you have help from the start. That first 2 weeks is kind of a critical learning period. That is also where, if we think about mental health stuff, that's where baby blues can happen. You're feeling like really a lot more overwhelmed. Everything's new. After 2 weeks, you kind of start to get your rhythm. You figured out breastfeeding a little more. You know your baby even better. And so things do typically, and typically is a very loose term here, flex and flow, but things are gonna get a little bit easier over time. And so to have that help, whether that be family, friends, meal prep, perinatal psychologist, chiropractic, even seeing a prenatal and a postnatal chiropractor, even one for your baby, you know, knowing who your doctors are, your lactation team, postpartum doulas, chefs. I mean, and I'm going really crazy. Like that's a huge team of people, but just have someone, know who you can call, especially have your lactation resources ready and then your questions resources ready. A lot of times that's also your pediatrician's office. Have those lists done ahead of time. I will say that there is a class called the Afterbirth Plan class. I will link it down below. I helped collab on it, so I know the curriculum very well. It's done by Alyssa Berlin, and it helps you prep to set up your plan, the after birth plan. We make a lot of birth plans, but we don't make after birth plans. And so to be kind of forced to do that work, to have your list of resources, whether you use them or not. What I would hate for you is to feel so isolated and alone, and then that begins your parenting journey off on the wrong foot rather than the right foot. And ideally, we want you feeling empowered. We want you feeling so like, okay, I'm kind of overwhelmed, and feeling overwhelmed is normal, but feeling like, okay, but like I know who to call, and I know that like I can nap and I can pass the baby off. It's okay to pass the baby off. And then I know I can call in for reinforcements if we have a rough night or whatever. Get help from the start. Know who your resources are so that you have people to call. Thanks everyone for being with me here today. I hope you found that list really helpful. I have like 500 other things. I'm totally exaggerating, but I could come up with a lot more tips for the postpartum period. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you comment down below and let me know. Also, what I love about this community is the fact that we are a community, that you guys learn from each other. And so if you've had a baby, share your biggest tip or something that you wish you would have known in the postpartum period down below, and we can learn from one another. I will also link my website down below. I have childbirth classes over there, coping with labor class, and then especially for this video, I do have an infant safety and CPR class that teaches you how to give medications and how to recognize if there's anything wrong with your baby. Because one of the things in the postpartum period is we want you feeling confident, and a lot of times having that information, especially being able to recognize things that might be wrong, can be really helpful for you. Make sure you subscribe down below, and then head on over to Instagram and make sure you follow me on Instagram so you never miss anything else that's going on. A lot of behind the scenes happen over there. And then until next time, don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Let's do it. Okay, we doing it.
Make sure you give it a like, share it, subscribe-y, divey, libey, scrolly dolly to the beginning. One more time. My nails look atrocious. They're much better for badge exams, but holy, need a manicure. Okay. Guys, I'm Sarah Lavonne, and go back.
Okay, one more time.
Hello, hello, hi, hi, hi. Hi, 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 hi. Just kidding. Mind you, I also think that it's important for good little outlet. What the word postpartum needs anytime. Needs? What the word needs. I don't know what postpartum needs. Actually, I'm gonna tell you what postpartum needs. Anything else I didn't say that you wish I would have said? Honey,